Hey everyone, thanks so much for joining us here at WIM, What is Movement? Today we have an awesome guest. I'm really excited. His name is Kenny Santucci. He's a trainer at Solus CrossFit in New York City. He does triathlons. He created Body by Solus. Hey Kenny, how are you? Thanks for
Good,
joining
how are you?
us.
Thank you for having me.
Welcome. So tell me a little bit, tell the audience who doesn't know like who you are, what you do, where you're from.
I do a little bit of everything. I'm just very passionate about the fitness space, so I do a lot in that realm, I'd say. I created an event called Strong New York, which we'll be having on December 1st here in Solace and in New York. I created a program at Solace, New York, where it's just a HIIT style program, kind of based off a lot of the body weight CrossFit movements that have been used forever. I just umbrellaed in and called it something different. I didn't reinvent the wheel or rework the way the body moves. And then I still like to compete a little bit, so I do some CrossFit competitions. I just finished the New York City Marathon for the third time. I did
Awesome.
a couple triathlons.
Congratulations.
Thank you. So everything and anything fitness. I enjoy also the art of networking and working with people and helping people out. I believe there's two types of people in the world. There are people who are driven by money, and there are people who are driven by relationships. I happen to be the person who's driven by relationships. That's why,
I love that.
money's a little tight sometimes. So.
I get it. Sometimes it would be easier, I feel like, if I was somebody who was motivated by money.
Yeah.
I'm motivated by passion. Like things that ignite me, will force me to work hard. But money itself, don't get me wrong, I like the things that money buys, but money itself doesn't necessarily motivate me. Yeah. Well, tell me, how did you get into the fitness industry? What made you so passionate about fitness?
I was just a fat slob when I was a kid.
Okay.
Yeah, and so many people are so offended by that. I'm like, that's what it is. It's constant bad choices, not understanding what I was doing to not only myself but people around me. I always tell people, your physical capabilities and your health and wellness will affect you and the people around you. So that's why I take it very serious. I love the fitness industry because as much as we think it's relevant for people like us because we're so into it, 90% of the world doesn't think the same way. There are so many people. There are more gyms and more ways to get in shape and more ways to track your heart rate and your blood pressure and all these things. And it's like, how many people don't use it? The obesity rate is still crazy. McDonald's is still a company. Soda is still drank by millions of people around the world. Like, you think about things like that and you're like, well, those things are so bad for us. I don't even know why they still exist,
Right.
And everybody's like, oh, well, it's cheap and blah, blah, blah. Yeah. So is an apple, So now I'm not one to go out and buy an apple, but it's like, I'm also not one to go and crush 3 cheeseburgers either,
Right.
So, I'm just very passionate about the whole space just because growing up, I felt the wrath of other people and the way people looked at you and treated you when you're out of shape and you don't really take care of yourself. And the way I looked at myself was more important. The way I looked in the mirror and I'm like, I'm unhappy. I don't care what anybody says. If you're out of shape, you're more lethargic, you're more susceptible to disease, you're always, a little bit more depressed, a little bit slower. You're not as upbeat and as good as you possibly can be when you're in shape. There are days when I feel like great, when I'm eating right and doing all the things I should be doing, sleeping well, making sure I get my workouts in, things like that. Like, I feel great. Those are my best days. And I tell people all the time, most people work 9 to 5s, Monday to Friday.
Right.
I live every day. I try to make the best of every day. I enjoy, if I go out to lunch, I want to enjoy lunch. If I'm teaching class, I want to enjoy teaching class. If I go out at night, I want to enjoy that. I think most people are always like, oh, I can't wait for the weekend, or I can't wait for this wedding, or I can't wait for this. I try to live every day. I don't really have much of a game plan. with anything. So I like to indulge in what I do on a daily basis.
I love it.
Yeah.
What was the turning point for you?
Kind of looking in the mirror one day, and when I was about 13, when I was like 13 or 14 years old, I was just so unhappy with myself. I hated the way it looked. I hate the way it felt. Like I didn't like the way things felt on me. I tell people all the time, like it was such a remarkable thing for me to, I was a 38 waist, and for a guy that's huge, right? As a 13-year-old kid, 14-year-old kid.
Wow. When
I bought my first pair of like size 31 jeans, I was like, oh my God, not only can I now fit in jeans, but now I'm buying a size 31. That was 7 sizes below where I was. And I just felt better about myself. Even my shit days were better than my good days when I was heavy. And I wanted to do that for other people. After I figured it out for myself, I wanted to help inspire other people. And I'll be the first one to say it. My methods aren't world renowned. Not everybody's like, oh, he's so great. I'm a dick sometimes, but only because I give a shit. It's my delivery doesn't work for everybody. I grew up in a very Italian, New Jersey style household where it was always tough love. I never got coddled. I never got like, oh, everything's going to be okay. Everything was always shit, no matter what you did. I could have came home with a check for $1 million, driving up in a Porsche, and told my dad how great life was, and he'd still be like, all right, well, what you fuck up on? Yeah. So, so I kind of grew up in that household where that's kind of the only way I really know how to teach. I had coaches all through high school and college who were the same way. I never had anyone like really like pat me on the back and be like, oh, everything's going to be okay. So that's the way I teach. And I don't mean it from a malicious place. I want people to do well. I want to see people do better. From people, random people I meet, to my members in the gym, to my staff, to friends of mine. I like seeing people do well. I think there's enough to go around. And there's plenty of opportunity for people to have a great day every day. I always say, like, if you're nice to somebody in a cab driver is going to go home and treat his wife or her husband better, and they're going to go treat the kids better, and everything's a trickle-down effect. And I think a lot of that starts with fitness. It's like you'll never finish a workout where you say, oh my God, I shouldn't have done that. Right? Yeah. So I never finish workouts, or I never like kind of get my heart rate going or do something where I'm like, that was a waste, Of
course.
You always feel good about it. And I think I don't truly understand the science behind it. And I think people who say they understand the science behind it are bullshitting. I just listened to a podcast. It's 3 hours long on Joe Rogan. And it was this constant debate between two nutritionists who one believes in just a plant-based diet and the other one believes in, kind of a paleo type of diet.
Sure.
And they're going back and forth. And this research says this, and this one says this, and that one says this, and this, and like they never even came to a conclusion, Right. But that's how it is. It's like, what workouts are the best? Well, if there was one workout that best, there wouldn't be 8 million trainers in New York City, right? So, if you're doing something, it's great. Yeah. Do I agree with certain philosophies and methodologies more than others? Absolutely. Sure. But it's what works for me. I think jumping on a bike every day and doing an hour cycling class, in my opinion, isn't the most effective way. But if you have an hour to kill in your day and you just want to jump on a bike and, have a fan blowing in your face, you do that. That's great.
Go for it. Yeah.
So
when you had that turning point and you were 13 years old and you're like, I want to do something. I want to feel better. I want to look better.
Yeah.
What did you start doing?
I just was more conscious of what I was doing. Like, I remember my parents put me on a diet when I was like in 5th grade, 6th grade, because my doctor's like, he's going to have cholesterol by the time he's like 15, 16. So when I got to high school, I was
15, 16.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So I was like, as soon as I got to high school, I'm like, I'm going to start playing sports. I played baseball, but I mean, you could look at a pro baseball player. You could be a fat slob and be a good baseball player. So I wanted to play a sport that I'm like, it was physically demanding. So I started playing football in high school. And at the time I really didn't saw myself as a fat kid, but I'm like, oh, if I go out for like wide receiver or something, maybe they'll let me play. You know? And they were like, nah, Chubby, you're with the lineman. So I was a lineman, but I started to pick up muscle magazines and just read what like these guys were saying. Like I'm old school meathead in a way. Like I just wanted to bench press and do that stuff when I started doing it. And it always felt good, you know? I started reading like Muscle Development, which is anybody who knows what that magazine was. It was basically for juice heads. It was you know, these bodybuilding style workouts, and they were like 6 hours long, and you couldn't even complete a workout like that unless you were on something. And I would start reading these, and I'd see these guys like just pictures, these guys like eating tuna out of the can, you know, throwing away soda bottles and doing all, and I'm like, that imagery always stayed with me. And I'm like, all right, well, I'm going to not eat cake anymore and like not drink soda and not eat pasta every Sunday. And kind of these traditions that I grew up with, I let go for the betterment of, you know, my health and wellness. And of course, my family was just like, what are you doing? What's wrong with you? Because my brothers and my sister they were never that heavy. I was the only one who was like really heavy. So I didn't understand that too as a kid. So maybe it's a curse and a haunting, but it's kind of what drives me still at 35.
Yeah. So they had that reaction. Did you was it hard for you to make those changes? Was it?
No, a lot of that stuff I kind of stopped cold turkey. As soon as somebody's like, this is bad, don't do it. I'm just like, all right, this is stupid. You know? So
how do you feel that fitness was a integral part of your healing process? Because essentially this was kind of like you physically were improving your health. And it sounds like for you it was also very much like a psychological, mental healing process as well.
I noticed that as I lost more weight, people treated me differently. As I got in better shape, I felt better. I remember like it was just like not only physical and emotional things, but you know, I remember my legs used to rub together. Like, and I'd have like, you know, there was just so many things. I had like these bumps on my legs because I was heavy, and, you know, I was always just slow and, you know, didn't like to do a lot. And all that kind of went away when I started to lose weight. And the more I chased it, the better I got, you know, and then I was like, as simple as like going and working out and going to the gym, lifting weights and doing all that stuff. And then there were days and how I got into running and doing a lot of like triathlons and marathons was, I was just like, all right, I'm going to go for a run. Right? And I could remember the day I was in high school. I was probably 15 or 16 years old. And we used to do like 3 to 5 mile runs. I went to high school in Jersey City. So we'd run from Jersey City through Hoboken and then back into Jersey City. So the whole, I think it's like 6 miles. And everybody turned around when we got to the north end of Hoboken and went back. And I kept going. And I went for 15 miles.
Wow.
Yeah. Just on a whim. And I'm like, fuck, I could do a marathon. I could keep running. I could have kept going. The only problem is I had to go catch a train. So I turned details. So I kind of went back, and that's what like kind of intrigued me to start doing some more running and stuff. But then I realized like, all right, now I started to dive into the science more and wanted to understand more, because I'm like, all right, I'm running so much, I'm losing weight, but I'm not building any muscle. And now I'm burning the muscle tissue I'm building from running these long distances. So finding a fine balance through my teen years and through my 20s and stuff was the thing I enjoy doing. Even this year, I'm 35 years old and I just ran the marathon. Everybody's like, why do you do it? I'm like, 'cause I just want to be able to do it my whole life. I just think it's a quality of life that I want to have in my later years. Like, if I can't do it now, I'm not going to be able to do it at 55 or 65. And the people that keep me motivated and inspire me are older people. You know, I always used to look at old people and I'm just like, oh God, I never want to get there. And now I'm excited about getting there because I want to be a kind of a beacon of light for somebody else in my later years, in my 40s, 50s, 60s. Sometimes I dread it. I'm like, God, I don't want to be 40. And then I'm like, God, yeah, I remember one of the first jobs I had when I lived in Jersey, and I was 18, 19 years old, and I'd see guys in their 30s. I'm like, these guys look like hell. They're all beaten down. And, they're
so different now, though.
They don't take care of themselves. Yeah, now I'm 35. It's like, knock on wood, I really don't have that many gray hairs. And everyone's always like, you got a great head of hair. I'm like, great. I hope I could hold on to this. And, doing more research and looking into the science of it more. And there are definitely certain things that we put into our body and that we can do to ourselves that add those stresses to our lives, that add wrinkles to our face, that give us gray hair. I just try to stay away from stress, and I try to stay away from anything that's going to cause me to kind of age a little bit faster than I want to.
Right.
Yeah. But I don't want to live forever. I mean, there's so many people like, I can't wait to live to 150. I'm like, that's too long. I'm good. You cut me off somewhere between 80 and 100. I'm like,
that's your
that's
your
my
wish.
window.
That's your window.
Fine.
Yeah. So I've heard you call your class Team Beautiful, and you say it's because it has to do with like exuding positivity.
Yeah. When I was on television for years, and when I was on television, I hated doing some of the interviews because it wasn't like this. It wasn't like one-on-one. It was a director sitting in a chair, and I'd have to rehash the last 3 days. So you're talking about the same topics that we went over 100 times for 4 hours in an interview room. So I was always a big wrestling fan growing up. And I would always be like, could I cut a wrestling promo? And they'd be like, yeah, do it. So I just cut these wrestling promos all the time. And they were like, well, what's your wrestling name? And I was like, Mr. Beautiful. I just said, it was just like a stupid thing. I just said it. And it kind of caught on, and the production team started calling me Mr. Beautiful. And then this cast started saying it. And it was like a joke. And I was like, it was kind of like just a wrestling persona. And even now, I'll walk around the street and people are like, oh, Mr. Beautiful. I'm like, I could think of 100 things I could call me that are worse, so I'll stick with that.
Right.
But when I started training, there were people who were like, God, your client looks like shit. I'm like, yeah, but at least they're here. Yeah. At least they're trying.
Yeah.
There's something beautiful about that. Totally. So that's when I started calling it Team Beautiful, because I'm like, I can't say anything to you if you're trying. If you're at least attempting to get better, then you're attempting to make your surrounding world and you and everybody around you a little bit better, because you never know who you're going to inspire, right? The fact that I got so into working out, I opened up a gym about 6 years ago in New Jersey that I'd sold off since then, but I got my mom into it, and it saved my mom's life. My mom had a massive heart attack. Yeah. And they said the only thing that helped her survive was the fact that her heart was so strong, because I had her doing CrossFit for 3 years.
That's amazing.
Yeah. But she had already if you understand a heart attack, it's clogged arteries. It's everything that CrossFit could have, or fitness could have prevented years before that, but she wasn't. And this was in her late 60s. And she survived. And when I talked to the doctor was like, let me talk to your son. He's like, listen, ease her back into it, but she's good to go. And he was like, you basically saved your mother's life by making her work out. Yeah. So, my passion drove, my saving my mother's life. And, I look at my dad right now. My dad had a stroke back in April. He's been in and out of the hospital since then.
Yeah.
But his physical health and wellness affects my whole family,
Of course.
I couldn't tell you how many nights I stayed in the hospital, and I'm back and forth to New Jersey, which affects me, affects my staff, affects the members. And it's all because one person doesn't want to take care of themselves. So that's why I always tell people, I encourage you to take care of yourself so that someone else doesn't have to take care of you later on, because you'll affect other people. And if you care about the people around you, then don't be selfish with your own life. When people say oh, somebody commits suicide, it's like, they're selfish because they're not dealing with the aftermath of what they do.
Sure.
Everyone else around them is. And I think obesity and a lot of these diseases that, or whatever you want to call them, kind of affect everybody else more than they affect you. Like you're hurting everyone else around you. I don't know why I love watching it, or I just watch it like I'm watching a car crash. It's like that, my 600-pound life.
I know so many people who feel the same way. Yeah.
And you're watching, you're like, this is a direct representation. It's like the far left, the far right. Like the fitness event I created, I created something that I consider fitness. I'm not a bodybuilder. I'm not into supplements. I don't push shit on people. Yeah. I believe in every day taking care of yourself, doing something. You don't have to go pose on stage. You don't have to do all that. So I wanted to create a fitness event or a fitness festival that wasn't geared towards that. Everything else, the fit conventions and all these different things, the Arnold Classic and Mr. Olympia, are all geared towards this high level, bodybuilding. Like I'm starving myself for days to be in that world. And then on the other hand, you have these people who just literally, they have feeders, which is disgusting to me, where they're too big to get out of their own house. So they have someone like shovel food. They're like a garbage disposal. Yeah. So like you have the two extremes here. Yeah. I'm not saying you got to be this guy. And I'm not saying, I'm definitely telling you shouldn't be this guy. Fall somewhere in the middle, fall somewhere where you're taking care of yourself on a daily basis. Because if you're taking care of yourself, then insurance and all these other things don't, knock on wood. I don't really go to the doctor because I have one of my best friends I was away with for his bachelor party like 2 years ago. He's on like 3 different types of medication for his heart and all this stuff. And I go, yeah, because he's out of shape. He's overweight. And I'm like, dude, you're 38 years old. What are you going to be like at 57? So
young.
Yeah. So, it affects people.
Absolutely.
And I push it on my family sometimes, maybe pretty more than I should. But I
sounds like you're doing well by them though. Yeah. So
I believe in it because I don't want them to have to live like that or deal with that stuff. I'm not saying fitness is going to stop every stroke in the world, but it will definitely slow it down, and the healing process is faster. There have been so many instances in my life where I've seen fitness save people's lives or help people. Like I got my little brother into working out and training when we were in high school. Right? He was like a skinny little dude. And he used to come to the gym with me, and now he's big. I mean, everybody calls him my bigger brother because he's probably 240 pounds. Wow. And he looks like he's huge. And he got into a really bad car accident back in 2007, 2008. He got thrown through the canopy of like a Jeep Wrangler. And the doctor said that because he was so thick and he was so strong, like if he was any smaller, he would have broke his neck on the canopy. But he ripped right through it and then landed on his feet. And his recovery, and his recovery process, he broke his back. He broke it, Wow. And his recovery process was, they were like, oh, it's remarkable how quick he recovered. I was like, it's not remarkable. He's strong. He had muscle. As soon as he started to move again, it came back. So I tell people all the time, one of my nephews is 11, 12 years old. I got him a kettlebell for his birthday, and I send him workouts, and he does all this stuff. And he's like super into it. He'll send me shirtless pictures of himself flexing and stuff, but he's into it. And I'm like, if he builds muscle at a young age, he's going to be way better off later on in life.
Totally.
If you never build muscle, after 25, 30 years old, we start to deteriorate. It's harder now to keep muscle on him. And I always say there's nothing wrong with being strong. Nothing. No one's ever going to be like, oh, you're too strong.
Right.
And even if they are, you're like, great, good. It's a good problem.
That's definitely better than the alternative.
For sure.
Yeah. So I'm curious, like I'm hearing all these like amazing stories. People very close to you whose lives have literally been saved through fitness.
Yeah.
I'm very curious, like in your day to day, when working with clients, working with your classes, just people in the industry, how have you seen fitness impact other aspects of their life? People who are not, professional athletes or not, necessarily fitness enthusiasts, but who do participate? Like, how have you seen them getting more involved in fitness routines?
The best part of my job is getting to work with other people. I truly believe that. I think we give ourselves a lot of purpose here on this earth. You know, you see what's happening in California. Like, at a moment's notice or at the drop of a dime, the world could go up in flames and a flood could wipe us all out.
And we so close to it,
yeah, and we see it on a daily basis. You know, it's like the world doesn't give a shit what we're doing. You could be a famous Hollywood actor or actress, or you could be a guy sleeping in the subway. Yeah. It doesn't matter.
In our time here, we're like a blip on
this planet. On the radar, yeah.
In the universe, like even smaller, you know?
Yeah. No one, nothing out there cares. So while we're here, you should enjoy your day to day and, you know, help as many people. And there's definitely a euphoric feeling when you're helping somebody else, and you're watching somebody else change. And I see it on a daily basis, like every day. Like I told everybody at the beginning of this year, I was like, everybody in my class is going to get a pull-up by the end of the year. And if you don't, I'm throwing you out of the gym. My favorite.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm throwing you out. So I program it 2-3 times a week for the last year. Over the course of the year, it's incredible. Like when you see somebody do something that they never thought they could do or they weren't capable of doing. I know what that feeling's like because when I did my first marathon, I'm like, oh my God, this is amazing. When I did an Ironman, I'm like, if I could do this physically, nothing else matters. I could do anything. You know, if I can mentally prepare and put myself through this and continue to go on, then I could do anything. And I like helping people discover and realize that they're capable of doing other things. Some of the reason why I do some of the marathons are like, well, you didn't train all year for it. I go, I don't need to. I don't need to because I don't need to be told. I always tell people when they're like, I can't pick this kettlebell up. I'm like, well, look how you're grabbing it. I go, if I told you that was filled with money and all you had to do is make sure you got it home, wouldn't you tuck it in your arm, keep it close, pick it up like you mean it? I go, do things with purpose. Do things like you want to do it. Mean to do these things. And that's when you start to inspire people. And I have 100 reviews about how I'm an asshole and how I was rude to people and this and that. And then fine, I'm not for you. Then you need to go somewhere else. But the people who buy into what I'm doing enjoy it. They love it. And, you know, we joke around about it. I'm not that serious that I'm like, oh, I'm going to fucking throw you out. But I'm like, I'm here to help you. Like, that's what you're paying. You could go to any other gym, grab a bar and start trying to do pull-ups. I'm here to help you do that faster, more efficiently. And that's my job. And if I'm not doing that, then you're a fucking idiot for paying me. Right? Because what am I standing here doing? You just want a pat on the ass? You want a participation trophy? I was like, I don't do that. Like, if you want that, go somewhere else. But I'm here to help you facilitate, get what you want out of the hour that you have here or the membership that you bought here. Yeah.
So what would you tell people who are, you know, some people feel like fitness and, you know, the health lifestyle is very daunting. It's overwhelming. We're in an age of like you said, there are 800, million trainers and there's all different types of workouts. And there's a million different diets. Yeah. And so what would you tell somebody who, this is very foreign to and they're, not on a healthy path but they know they need to do something and they don't know what to do. How do they start? How do they?
I would say start with what comes easiest. Some people could start with a good diet. And I'm not saying like tomorrow you cut out everything. Right. You only eat whole grains and, grass-fed beef and all that shit. No, do what makes sense to you. For me, it was like taking a piece of bread off my sandwich, right? Yeah. Giving up soda. Then I gave up pastries. Then I gave up, eating pasta and stuff like that all the time. And it's just like, it kind of, as you drop things to the side, you start to get a little bit lighter, and you start to move forward. And now you're like, okay, I came this far. What's my next step? Some people like to jump right into the gym. You don't need to, I tell people all the time, like, yeah, we offer CrossFit. We're not just a CrossFit gym. We're a strength and conditioning gym, right? So I tell people all the time, I go, you don't need to go downstairs and deadlift 500 pounds. understand the movement, know what you're doing, enjoy the learning experience, and then you could grow. You know, everybody sees somebody like Paul come in and, you know, he's benching and he's doing all this stuff. They're like, I want to do that. It's like, all right, pump the brakes, figure out what you want to do. Work with a trainer, try to get, you know, the mobility and the strength that you need to do what he's doing. Don't jump right into what they're doing. So I would say finding the right mentor in the fitness space, finding the right person that you admire. And everyone's like, oh, I like The Rock. Well, he's not as accessible as you think you'd like him to be. So yeah, but finding, I mean, there's so many gyms and so many trainers and so many people out there that are willing to help out. I will say this about the fitness industry: people want to be involved. They want to help. So finding somebody on social media, I mean, now it's easier than ever before. You know, putting the event together. I reached out to so many people, just sending them an Instagram message being like, hey, I'd love for you to be a part of this. So I think if you found somebody on social media who you're like, oh, I really like her, I really like him, you know, I'd love to work with them, reach out to them. Like, let them mentor you. Like, you don't want to bite off more than you could chew right away. Because then you're going to get burnt out. You see it all the time. People are like, all right, I'm going to change my diet. I'm going to go to the gym. I'm going to do all this stuff. It's like, no, take it in little bits. I tell people all the time when they join the gym, they're like, oh, so how often should I come? I go, how often do you want to come? They're like, I don't know, like 2-3 days a week. Great, come 2-3 days a week. That works for you. You 9 times out of 10, you can answer your own question. What should I eat? What do you like to eat? I like to eat cheeseburgers. I was like, all right, well, dial that back. Don't eat them every day. You know, try to throw some vegetables in there, and, you know, try not to. I like to drink. Okay, how often do you drink? 5 days a week. Do I need to tell you that's bad? Like,
right.
You know,
don't do that.
Yeah, don't get wasted every night.
Right.
Have a drink, a beer. I'm not, and like, if you're at the point where you're like, I'm good for 4 or 5 drinks a day. Okay, fine. Have some self-control. Yeah. Do 3 drinks a day. You know, and then you'll start to realize you're like, I don't really need 3. I could go down to 2, and then if it's 1, then fine. It's 1. Now it's like, now you're only drinking twice a week, and you'll have a drink a night. You know, I spent my 20s traveling, doing a lot of events and stuff, and I found myself drinking all the time. Yeah. And when you start to dial it back and be like, all right, I'm gonna do like a sober October or something, you realize you're like, oh my God, I feel so much better. So then you don't want to feel the way you feel when you're drunk all the time, when you're drinking all the time. So I try to limit the amounts of times. I mean, I like a good cocktail just as much as anybody else. I mean, I'm signed with a beer company, you know, because I like a good beer every once in a while. So you want to, you know, you want to use it as like a celebratory thing. You don't want to be like, oh, I'm sitting home on a Monday night, I might as well throw 6 back. It's like, that's not the way it's meant to be done. But so do you feel like, is this, so what I'm hearing is that it's really like make small changes that are sustainable. Yeah, it's a lifestyle change for sure. Yeah. Like if you're like, oh, I'm going to go do a bodybuilding competition, it's like the mental strength that you need to do that, you know, to basically starve yourself at that point, to get to that, you know, and you're miserable. Who the fuck wants to eat dry chicken and broccoli every day? Right. That's horrible. You know, enjoy it. Like I said, enjoy life. Be smart about it, you know? Yeah. And do you feel like that's what, did you ever feel like you have is this a very easy way of life for you now? Or do you ever feel like you I mean, listen, I mean, I struggle with my weight sometimes. I'm always like, oh, I want to be in better shape, but it's good. It's part of my journey. And it's like, I've learned things along the way that I didn't know before. That's the problem. Everybody wants to be like, I want it now. I want everything right now. But the beauty of it is in the learning process and getting better and understanding like, okay, this works for me. This doesn't, you know, what works for you, might not work for me. You know, I like working out in the morning. You like working out at night. I like eating, you know, beef. You like eating plants and stuff. Right. You know, it's what works for you. You know? So. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it. That's awesome. That's very cool.